Hey, one other thing I wanted to mention, I wanted to ask you guys about this too, because this has been something that I've always thought is an interesting point, and I'm curious, and John will probably know this, how the mainstream explains this. But first of all, one of the people that was involved in the tracking the solar noon was a YouTuber named Karen B. And I don't know if any of you know her or not. She's fairly new, just did her first video back in late January. And her first video, which is this one, My Path to the Flat Earth, is absolutely outstanding, guys. It's really good. And I would recommend that you watch it because she raises all kinds of great points. But one of the points she raises in here is really good in that she's talking about, you know, the Earth as it's in different positions around the sun at different times of the years, yet our view of the night sky stays the same. So I'm going to play this clip really quick. And then if you guys could explain maybe if or what the mainstream explanation is for this. So let me play this really quick here.
How about the constellations? The stars rotate around the North Star, Polaris. We see the same constellations throughout the year, just in different positions. Some people think that this proves that the Earth is a sphere, but I think it proves that the stars rotate over our head. Here is the sun in space. Here is the Earth. The Earth orbits the sun while spinning on its axis. At night, when we are not facing the sun, we see the stars in the dark part of space. Why don't we see completely different constellations 3 months later when we are a quarter of the way through our orbit? Or how about 3 months after that when we are on the opposite side of the sun? Every 3 months, the constellations should be completely different, but they aren't.
Where we're looking from here, if we're looking away from the sun and we're looking at this section of space, looking straight up, as compared to when we're over here and we're looking at this section of space when we're looking straight up, you know, here, here, and here, that's always been one of the things that has never made any sense to me at all. You know, how is it that we're not seeing completely different sets of stars? And this is such a glaring, obvious thing that anybody can think about. You know, it just kind of boggles my mind as to why is it that we're not, you know, what is their explanation for this? Do you have any idea, John?
There is none. There is no explanation for it. And, you know, I think Jaron was really the first one that pointed this out, at least to me, that, you know, technically the way that the solar system's laid out, the ecliptic plane that the Earth supposedly orbits around is offset to the Earth's, to the sun's path of orbit, or the galactic plane, by 60 degrees. So that means that the Earth should be like northwest of the galactic equator in, say, the summer, and it should be southeast of the galactic equator in the winter. And yet, and just like she's showing in this diagram here, we should have completely unique sets of stars at nighttime during each season. Yet we can see all of the same stars from somewhere on Earth all year long. And there is no explanation for this except for the fact that astronomers are apparently retarded. No offense.
Yeah, and I think every night the constellation should be pretty much different, you know, at least to some noticeable degree. So anyway, just wanted to bring that up, and kudos to Karen B. She's got some absolutely wonderful questions in here that she's been asking, and yeah, I didn't think that there was an explanation for it because I had yet to see anybody explain it. Even if the Earth is pointed, you know, the axis of the Earth is pointed at the North Star all the time, you're still in completely different positions around the sun. So yeah, that just never made any sense to me. So kudos to Karen for bringing that up. And if anybody does have a mainstream explanation for it, I'd love to hear it.
Let me share my screen real quick. I want to show people an issue with the, because I do think I've seen some people explain it, I don't want to say incorrectly, but differently than I think it should be explained. Tell me when you can see this. It's just a drawing here.
Okay, you are presenting, and okay, we can see it.
So, you know, getting down here and showing the idea of the sun in the middle, and, you know, here's our tilt. So this little red dot, hopefully you can see the red dot, is kind of the idea of where I would be. Okay, so somebody who's maybe I'm at 37 degrees, but, you know, United States would be somewhere up here. And when it's nighttime, we're faced away from the sun. So nighttime here, nighttime here, nighttime here, nighttime here. And when you think of the fact that the North Star is, the same direction off this North Pole, well, we can kind of zoom out and give us an idea. And no matter how far away I put this star, because people will say, oh, you're doing it too close, your scale's off. Let's go infinite distance away. And then think about the fact that here I turn and I face north to see the North Star. Okay, so I'm looking this way. Well, here I also turn north to see the North Star. So anybody who doesn't see that there's a problem with the fact that this star here remains in the same spot in my sky, regardless of where I am in the orbit of Earth, no matter how far I put this star, it doesn't fix the fact that I would have to look this way, which is not north. And, if I'm facing this direction, well, as the Earth spins, I'm going to turn. This is how the turn, if I'm facing north, well, as the Earth spins, I'm going to spin with it like this, meaning if I'm facing this way, then I'm facing this way, then I'm facing this way, then I'm facing this way. So how can there be a star that is lined up with this North Pole that doesn't change its perspective if I'm going in this distance? And again, this is a 595 million mile orbit in a year. And then you add, decades and stuff on top of that, and it just becomes a crazy thought. Does that make more sense, or does that kind of show it a little better?
No, you're absolutely right, and I totally agree that even overnight, facing north, like say right after sunset, facing north, say 12 hours later on the equinox, right before sunrise, you'd be facing in the opposite direction. So yeah, I totally agree that north it's relative, in a heliocentric ball Earth model, it's relative direction in space, depending on what time it is, right? And so, yeah, the North Star is a really, really excellent proof that the globe Earth model is wrong. And, technically, you could triangulate, based on your latitude, assuming a spherical Earth, you could triangulate on Polaris, from dusk until dawn. And I don't think it would come out to be 25 quadrillion miles or whatever.
It actually comes out to the same as the sun, 3590 something, or Bob, you know the number.
3415.9, 3415.9 miles.
Right. So that's if you're, triangulating even Polaris. So again, I don't get how when you add the curvature of the Earth, it becomes 93 million. If you're talking about the sun, that makes no sense. Basically, what we're saying is if you take two places on the same longitude and you take the North Star here, which we know is at 90 degrees, well, you can triangulate if you know the distance from here to here, which you can figure out. So you can figure out that distance from the North Pole, and then let's say that distance is whatever, and then you can get the angle that you're looking at the North Star from your location and triangulate it. Well, that comes out, whether you're looking at the sun or the pole star, either way it would work. And when you do that, it comes out to about 3,500 miles. And then all of a sudden, for some strange reason, if you add a curvature like this instead, now all of a sudden it's 93 million miles. Somebody needs to explain that to me, because it doesn't make any sense. And, for the people who keep going on about the Eratosthenes experiment, that's another thing that's it's a lack of understanding, or you're just allowing somebody to tell you a story that makes no sense. If this is the sun and it's close and local, well, of course, a shadow of an item standing right underneath the sun would be nothing. The shadow is going to be right on top of it. Yet somewhere 500 miles away, you're going to get a shadow. And based on this, they're saying Eratosthenes figured out the angle that he was getting off this shadow, and then from that angle was able to calculate the circumference of the Earth. Well, that's a great story, but it doesn't mean that the Earth is round. It means that if the sun was an infinite distance away and all rays were hitting the Earth parallel, that this is what the Earth would amount to if it was a ball. But again, they're using that as if it's proof. And again, find me the book where he said that. Well, isn't it convenient that none of Eratosthenes' works survived today?
Map of ancient Egypt. I've inserted two sticks or obelisks, one up here in Alexandria and one down here in Syene. Now, if at a certain moment each stick casts no shadow at all, that's perfectly easy to understand, provided the Earth is flat. If the shadow at Syene is at a certain length, and the shadow at Alexandria is the same length, that also makes sense on a flat Earth. But how could it be, Eratosthenes asked, that at the same instant there was no shadow at Syene and a very substantial shadow at Alexandria? The only answer was that the surface of the Earth is curved. Not only that, but the greater the curvature, the bigger the difference in the lengths of the shadows. The sun is so far away that its rays are parallel when they reach the Earth.
Wait a minute, how did Eratosthenes know how far away the sun was? To make this measurement, you have to assume the sun is extremely far away and that the sun's rays are parallel. But how do you look at things like this and get that the rays are parallel? Because it certainly doesn't look that way to me. If you look at the crepuscular rays of the sun coming through the clouds, you can see that it looks like the sun is right behind the clouds and the rays are emanating from the source of light, and those rays are not parallel. The most commonly accepted flat Earth model has the sun small and close and circling over the Earth. If you use a lamp and two objects of the same size, you can see how the same effect Eratosthenes saw can be created.